Hello, you guys, and welcome back to the Crime with Kylie podcast. Long time no listen, I know, and trust me, I'm very, very, very sorry. As every week went by, I just feel like I want to get a podcast episode out. I want to get it uploaded. I want to start reconnecting with everyone again because this is truly my passion. But sadly, I've had some difficult things come up medically, both for myself as well as my family. My dad found out about a cancerous tumor in his back, and he just got that out, thankfully, and my grandma thought that she had a UTI, but in fact, she also had a tumor, not a cancerous one, but a benign one, still causing pain though, so they're both at home resting. My eyes might look a little dilated right now because I've had my own issues with my eyesight, so right now everything is blurry, so I really hope that you can see this and that I don't look too crazy, but yeah, I am trying to be back now. I'm very excited because I've missed doing this. I've missed talking to all of you, so yeah. With all of that said though, let's get into why you're really here. You want to hear about the case. Now, the case we're going to be going over today, as I'm sure you saw in the title, is the case of 22-year-old Grace Millane. And I picked this case for today for a few reasons. One, Grace and I have very, very close birthdays. Mine is at the end of November and hers is at the beginning of December. She passed away tragically on her birthday or late in the evening before her birthday. She was possibly still 21 years old, but she would have been turning 22. That's how old I'm turning in a few months, and it really just hurts, and her story resonated with me so much because like most young people, she did her time. Like, she got her education, she was preparing herself for adulthood, and she just wanted to treat herself with the adventure of a lifetime before she fully delved into all of the adult responsibilities, before she went and got a job, before she started a family. As I'm sure we'll talk about further, her own mother as a young woman traveled to South America. She really just wanted that experience that I know that so many young people want, and so many actually go and they achieve it and they do it. But tragically for Grace, she never made it home. Some monster decided to take her life away from her while she was miles and miles away from home. Thankfully, Grace has a good family that cared about her, that checked in on her, that made sure to report her as missing. They knew that something was wrong. But still, not a lot of people have that. And that must be terrifying to be in a foreign country with all of these people and no one knows that you're missing. I don't want to keep giving you guys more and more details without actually giving you the proper context, so let's do our little warning that we have to do before each and every video, because these are sensitive events that we will be discussing today. First and foremost, I'm making this video because I care. I do not want this young woman, Grace Millane, to be forgotten. I also believe that her case, her story in particular, is one that could very much help young women in particular. Because like I said, so many young people, including myself, travel the world, go out to see new things, but there are still dangers. And I think that making more people aware of those dangers would be beneficial. I also want to do honor by her, and at the end of this video, I will share what her family has done on her behalf. I want to be respectful towards them, not at all respectful towards the killer. I might call him a few names here and there, but everyone else, all due respect. Topics in this video that are sensitive will include domestic violence. We will be mentioning rape and murder. So if you're okay listening right now to all of those topics, it's totally okay if you're not. Just click out of this video, but if you are, let's get into it. Grace Emmy Rose Millane was born on December 2nd of 1996 to her parents David and Gillian Millane. She was born in Wickford, Essex, England. Grace, as I'm sure you can tell by the pictures, had a beautiful smile, and I feel like her personality radiates from her appearance. She was kind-hearted, she was bright, she was driven. By the time it was 2018, she had graduated from the University of Lincoln with her degree in marketing and advertising. And as I mentioned a little bit ago, before she got into all those adulting responsibilities, before she got into even using her degree, she wanted to take a gap year and travel the world, see what it was all about. So Grace spent 6 weeks traveling in South America. She had gone around Chile, Patagonia, and Peru. And at that point, she was about halfway into her year-long adventure. And her next stop after South America was New Zealand. And according to her family, that was one of the places that was like at the top of her list. She could not wait to see it. And I don't blame her because New Zealand is absolutely gorgeous. I've been to Switzerland, but I've never been to New Zealand, and oh my gosh, just from the pictures alone, I can see why it looks so appealing. So initially when Grace got to New Zealand, she was not alone. She was actually with 2 of her friends, and they all went to Cape Reinga, which is a beautiful cape surrounded by mountains. It's very green, luscious, and there's a cute little lighthouse at the very end right by the ocean. She sent a selfie with her and her 2 friends to her parents and her 2 brothers. And from the sounds of it, she was messaging them constantly, like every single day, multiple updates, keeping them like up to date on her travels, her adventures, what she's eaten, where she's gone. Like, she was in constant contact with her family. Her dad, David, would later say in court that we heard from Grace virtually every day. She enjoyed sharing her adventures with us. Now, it was on November 30th of 2018 that Grace actually traveled to Auckland by herself. And she was going to go stay in a hostel there. The hostel that she checked into was called Base Backpackers, and this was in the central city. There, she would share a 4-bedroom dorm with 3 other travelers. Later that night, she would be on Facebook and Tinder, where she would match with 2 people. The first one, who she was messaging on Facebook, she would go on a date with that very same day. She went to his apartment, they met up, they watched a movie, and they spent the night together. This brings us now to December 1st of 2018. And on this day, she was actually going to go on a date with the other man who she matched with, the one who she matched with on Tinder. But what she did not know, and sadly what she could not have possibly known, is that that man would be her killer. At first, her chat with this man is relatively normal. How's your day going? Oh, how's your day going? Good. Do you have any plans later? Not really. Do you want to go grab a drink in Sky City? Sure. And of course, that actually sounds pretty good because the day before, she actually met her date at his apartment, like not in a public space. But this one, she would be meeting out in public. And let me just put this out there, most of their date was captured on CCTV footage. I don't know why, but in New Zealand, they have a lot more CCTV and better CCTV than we do in the United States because we pretty much know all of her last footsteps up until she got into room 308. And I'm jumping ahead, so we'll get to room 308 soon, in a bit. At 5:37 p.m., Grace was seen leaving Base Backpackers, her hostel, and she was going to be walking towards Sky City. A little while later, at 5:45 p.m., she arrives in the courtyard of Sky City, and she is wearing a beautiful black dress. It's the day before her birthday. Because it's now December, there's a large Christmas tree in the courtyard. She snaps a picture of it, and she sends it to her family members, her mom, dad, and 2 brothers. Sadly, neither Grace nor her family knew this at the time, but that would be the last message that she would ever send them. A few minutes go by and Grace is approached by the man who matched with her on Tinder. They greet each other with a smile and a hug, and then they go up the escalator to Andy's Bar and Burger. It's here that at first they go to the bar, they order their drinks, and then they move to a private table. At 7:14 p.m., the 2 of them leave Sky City and they go to the Mexican cafe that is actually right across the street. Grace orders a sangria with mint at the Mexican cafe, and according to her future killer, what they talked about were the people around them. They were just looking at people, people watching, and imagining what their lives were like, which honestly sounds pretty fun. I'd probably enjoy doing that too. And truly, when you're looking at the CCTV footage, everything looks normal. They even have signs of affection, like touching each other's backs and like little kisses. And throughout the entire duration of the date, Grace is actually texting her friend Amina the entire time. One of her first texts read, "I'm on a date with a guy who's the manager of an oil company." Grace also texted her friend this, "Cocktails all around." He was like, "It's my birthday tomorrow. We are getting smashed." And Grace's last message to her friend was, "I click with him so well. I will let you know what happens tomorrow." But the next day, Grace's friends never got a text back. At 8:27 p.m., her date, Jesse Kempson, settles their tab. The 26-year-old actually had his identity concealed for a while after she was murdered. But we are not going to conceal his identity because no monster deserves the protection of a concealed identity. Overall, the receipt that night from the Mexican cafe was for 3 jugs, 2 of margarita and 1 of sangria. At 8:30 p.m., the couple then went to another location. They went to a place called the Bluestone Room, which is kind of like a bar. And later, we would find out that Jesse Kempson had actually been there drinking alone prior to their date. So he took her back to the same place that he had been drinking before. And at this point, both of them have had quite a few drinks because they had drinks at Andy's Burger and Bar, and then they had drinks at the Mexican Cafe, and now they're having drinks at the Bluestone Room. They get a small table kind of towards the front of the pub, and then they begin kissing quite passionately. At 9:01 p.m., Jesse brings shot glasses to the table. They clink the shot glasses in a toast, and then they drink. But then, 19 minutes later at 9:20 p.m., Grace is seen getting up from the table, and we can all presume that she was going to the washroom. However, in her absence, Jesse Kempson starts looking through her purse. Like, he opens the purse, goes through her belongings. Very strange behavior, but of course she doesn't know about this because she's in the washroom. And at that time, there would have really been no reason for someone to be actively looking at the CCTV footage and noticing that. 9 minutes after that, at 9:29 p.m., Jesse does something really weird. I don't know if this was more common back then or if this is just a weird quirk of his. I don't know why he did this. But while they were together, he went on to Grace's Facebook and he posted like on her timeline, on her status. I don't know how that works. I'm sorry. And he was just like very beautiful, very radiant. And I don't know, like they're together in person. Can't he just say that to her in person? I guess in retrospect, it's a good thing that he did that because in part that's what led authorities to him. But I just thought that was odd behavior. Now at 9:40 p.m., the two of them get to City Life Auckland. And at first I didn't quite understand this, but it's a hotel combined with apartments. And initially when I was first doing research into this case, I thought that he already had a hotel room there, but in fact he actually lived there and that was his apartment. So that makes sense why when you see the two of them enter the hotel/apartment complex, he already has a key card. Like there's no going to the front lobby and buying one, acquiring one. That's just how they get into the apartments. And the entire time that they're seen going up to his apartment, they look like a happy couple. Like truly, looking at these photos without any context, my first thought was they're together. Girlfriend, boyfriend. She's holding his hand, his arm is around her, they're both smiling. Everything seems good. But he's actually a demented piece of, I don't know, if you have kids around while watching this, maybe don't do that, but like, he's a demented piece of shit. Truly, like, we'll get into what he did, but you'll agree. But at this point now, around 9:41 p.m., truly only Jesse Kempson and Grace know what happened after that, because although there's CCTV cameras everywhere else, they are not in his apartment. But from later autopsy reports, we found out that he at least strangled Grace for 10 minutes. It takes 10 minutes of a man of that size to put pressure on her throat to kill her. Which, later, as we'll get into, it's kind of hard with this case because we're kind of going back and forth because now that there's no CCTV footage, we don't necessarily know what happened based off of that, what was happening in the present. We kind of only know what happened due to her autopsy and the very little that he's admitted to. And what he admitted to eventually was rough sex gone wrong. And that, like I said, it takes 10 minutes. It would have taken him 10 minutes to strangle her to death. That's not pleasurable whatsoever. And I'm sure she did not agree to that. So according to Jesse Kempson, the very small amount of information that he's admitted to, this is what we know from him. We were kissing, we were talking, and kissing more. A music channel was playing on the television in the background, and at one point, Grace asked him to turn it off. The man says she then began to talk about 50 Shades of Grey. She told me that there's a few things she likes doing and that she's done with her ex-partner. We started having sex. At first, it was just normal, it was very placid. The man says that Grace then brought up the topic of bondage. And she started biting me and she asked me to, so I bit her. I stopped at first and said, "Is this something you really want to do?" He says that Grace replied with, "We're in the moment, let's just go with it." The pair then talked for a while before having sex again, holding my arms above my head and just biting, and then she hit my butt. And then she held me around my neck and pushed down. We started having, I guess, more violent sex. Jesse then said that they ended up on the floor and took intimate photos of each other. Okay? In reality, what happened is he killed her. That conversation probably did not happen. And he took intimate photos of her while she was deceased. At least 7 images. That's what actually happened from what we know. Because the thing is, it makes no sense for him to be the one to ask if this is okay, because he had actually violently raped a British tourist, someone else from England, 8 months prior. And I believe a year and a half before that, he had almost killed one of his other dates that he once again matched with on Tinder during sex. And the thing is, she actually got a protection order against him. And that was successful. Like, the protection order went through, everything all good. And she told police that Jesse Kempson threatened to kill her with a knife, like slit her throat during sex. Okay? So he had done this before. He had attempted to do this before. And at that point, the police were like, well, it's just he said, she said. So we'll give you a protection order, but like, he's not going to be arrested or anything like that. So that's why at the very beginning of this video, I told you guys, like, he should never have had access to Grace. He should have already been locked up, because this has been a repeated behavior. Sorry, just had to get that tangent out. Now let's go back to the lies of Jesse Kempson. What else he said allegedly happened. Jesse said, and then she told me to hold her throat and go harder. Afterwards, Jesse said that he went to the bathroom, but he fell asleep in the shower. And he said this because another thing he mentioned is that once they got into his apartment, then the alcohol started to kick in and, just being drunk. Jesse said that he remembered waking up and it was still dark and he crawled back into bed. He said that he thought Grace had left. So that was Jesse's first initial police interview. He ended it by saying, you know what? Grace and I had fun, we met, we talked, we had sex, and then she just left in the middle of the night, and I woke up and she wasn't there anymore. That's what he said the first time around. However, in fact, he had killed her, and the next morning, she was actually still there. She had not texted her family members, she had not texted her friends, and this was concerning to her family rather quickly because it was her birthday. So they were all calling her, texting her, happy birthday, this and that, the other, and she wasn't responding. That was not like her at all, because as we've talked about, she was texting her dad, her brothers, and her mom every single day. And Jesse, the next time he's seen is on CCTV footage. He's going down to the lobby, he's leaving, and he comes back with a brand new suitcase. And you know what he does with that suitcase? He puts Grace's body inside. And while he's sitting there in his apartment with Grace's body, he's looking up porn. He's watching porn. He looked up the location where he would later drop her body off in a shallow grave. He was looking up fires, ways to get rid of her body. He didn't seem concerned about this at all, because like I said, he's going between looking where he's going to bury her, porn, and then the last thing he did is he went back on Tinder. And he messaged another girl. He messaged another woman. And he set up a date for that day, December 2nd of 2018, Grace's birthday, right after murdering her. She should have been 22 years old. She should have been having a great time. She's miles and miles away from home. And he is such a monster. Thankfully, by December 8th, I believe, he gets caught. He gets arrested. But December 5th, let's just go 3 days later, on December 5th, her family reports her as missing because she hasn't been in contact with them. And thankfully, they were aware enough to know that that's just not like her and that something must have happened. So her dad, David Millane, flies down from England to New Zealand to beg for any information leading them to find his daughter. And Jesse did, in fact, end up going on a date with that other woman who he matched with on Tinder while Grace was still in his apartment. According to him, he just couldn't do it, and at one point had her body half in, half out of the suitcase. Now, this is what we know happened after that. At 8:35 a.m., CCTV footage shows Jesse leaving his apartment again to walk to a nearby Countdown supermarket. There he buys several items including Genola Power Clean, a twin pack of small gloves, and a packet of gum. He pays for all of these items with cash before returning to the hotel/apartment at 8:40 a.m. At 10:33 a.m., Jesse walks towards Queen Street and catches a taxi. While he's in the back of the cab, he smiles and uses his phone. At 10:42 a.m., he arrives at an Apex car rental shop and hires a small red car for 24 hours. He pays for this with a credit card and later returns to city life. And at some point during that outing, he actually looked up flesh-eating birds in New Zealand, or are there vultures in New Zealand? At 2:53 p.m., Jesse leaves city life again, and about an hour later is on CCTV footage arriving at Revelry Bar in Ponsonbury. And then a few hours after that, later that afternoon at 2:53 p.m., that is when he goes on his date. He meets her at Revelry Bar, and this bar is located in Ponsonby. And Jesse did not act entirely normal on this date. Actually, later on, when everything is revealed about what he did to Grace, this woman will testify and give evidence against him. That's because during their date, imagine you're just sitting there on a date with this brand new guy, and he starts talking about a story, a hypothetical story that totally happened to someone else, where a man accidentally killed a woman during rough sex. And that later on in this fictitious story about someone else, that man is convicted of manslaughter. He allegedly told his date, and I quote, "It's crazy how guys can make one wrong move and go to jail for the rest of their life." That is what Jesse Kempson told her. So he knew what he did to Grace was beyond wrong, and that if it actually all came out, he could probably go to prison for the rest of his life. And even after that, their date actually lasted quite a bit of time, and he didn't end up leaving until 5:25 p.m. At 7:30 p.m., though, he was caught once again on CCTV footage, this time in the red rental car, and he went to a store where he looked at a rug. Then at 7:45 p.m., he's seen back at his apartment in city life. However, then he leaves once again very quickly to go try to find a rug doctor, which I'm assuming, maybe that's what they call it in New Zealand, but I am assuming that that means a carpet cleaner because, well, he killed someone in his apartment. Then at 9:26 p.m. on December 2nd, still Grace's birthday, he is seen finally leaving his apartment with Grace. He is seen going down the elevator with two bags. One gray suitcase that contains Grace, and the other is like a black sports bag. He puts her in that black bag into the red rental car, and then once again he drives to another supermarket, where just like the morning prior, he buys a pair of gloves. And during this, of course, Grace's family members are still concerned about her because they have not been able to get in contact with her the entire day of her birthday. I believe it's on December 5th, which would be 3-ish days from then, that they would officially report her as missing. Now, for some odd unknown reason, Jesse actually keeps Grace's body in that red rental car for quite a bit of time. He doesn't actually get to the point where he's going to dump off her body, the location, until December 3rd, the very next day. It's not until December 3rd of 2018, the day after Grace's birthday, that at 6:14 a.m. he starts driving towards the Waitakere Ranges. And this is kind of like a bushland, I don't know, like not really a dense forested area, but I don't know, just it's like a grassland. But before Jesse arrives to the Waitakere Ranges, he actually makes a stop at 6:50 a.m. This stop is at a Western ITM, which from the CCTV footage and the pictures, to me it looks like a hardware store. There he buys 4 bolts as well as a red shovel. After he leaves the Western ITM, he then continues on his drive towards Waitakere Ranges. Once he arrives, he buries Grace in a very, very shallow grave, and he covers her body with punga branches. Then by 9:30 a.m., he was driving back to city life. When he arrived back to his apartment, for some reason, he was barefoot. At 9:58 a.m., though, he makes another outing. This time it's to a dry cleaners where he drops off a few bags. After that, he surprisingly goes and buys another suitcase. After he buys the other suitcase, he then goes to wash the red rental car as well as a pair of shoes. Presumably the pair of shoes that he wore when he buried Grace. Now this brings us to December 5th, the day that Grace's family officially reports her as missing. And of course, they, especially her dad, is planning on going from England to New Zealand to try to find his daughter and get more information. So, flights are being booked this day, Grace is officially missing. The other thing that Jesse ended up doing this day at around 4:30 p.m. is he took Grace's belongings that he still had at his apartment, and he dumped them. He just went over to Albert Park and he put them in a trash can. The day after that, December 6th of 2018, Jesse ends up leaving once again at 5:18 in the morning. And when he leaves, he goes quite a distance away. He takes an Uber out to Mission Bay and arrives back at 5:58 a.m. But to this day, he's never actually admitted the purpose of that trip. Only we can assume the purpose of that trip. With the belongings of Grace's that he dumped in the trash can at Albert Park, and when he dumped her body, he never dumped her cell phone. At least not in either of those locations. So this trip to the bay, it's presumed that he got rid of her cell phone that has never been found. December 6th also happens to be the same exact day that Jesse was questioned by detectives for the first time. And this is because, Grace was officially reported missing the day prior. And this is where Jesse essentially tells them around 8:43, 9 a.m. that, they met up, they had a good time, and they went their separate ways, and that was the end of the story. Later that day, Jesse gets another call from the detective, and this call is about that Facebook comment that he put on her feed, or on her timeline about, you're so beautiful and radiant, and the detective was just calling to ask about that. But then later, they ended up having another meeting, and I will show you the footage from that because Jesse denies doing anything wrong, and he says he's innocent, take his DNA, etc.
Did you kill Grace Millane? Okay. Jesse Kempson, you're under arrest for the murder of Grace. How did the evening pan out?
Yeah, pretty good.
Actually don't know if she's been murdered or not yet. She may be alive and well.
Okay.
But she might also be dead.
Okay.
Okay? And it could be that you've done it.
Hey, I just want to ask a question. Am I being arrested for something I didn't do?
You haven't been arrested, mate.
Oh.
No.
Oh, sorry. Holy shit.
Indicated that you're willing to speak to us about the events of last Saturday. Is that correct?
Yes.
Tell me what happened last Saturday.
From the beginning.
Now, December 8th is where things really pick up in speed because Jesse is called back in by detectives, and this time he admits that Grace is in fact dead. He also tells the detectives where he buried her body. But at the end of the interview, the lead detective asks, "Did you kill Grace Millane?" To which Jesse responds and says, "No." Despite him saying no, it's obvious that he did it. It's obvious that he at least buried her body at that point, so they do put him under arrest. On December 10th, Jesse is seen in court for the very first time. However, his name is suppressed. The Prime Minister, though, of New Zealand did give out a heartfelt message and said, "On behalf of New Zealand, I would like to apologize to Grace's family. Your daughter should have been safe here, and she wasn't, and I am sorry for that. My thoughts and prayers are with her father, David, who is in the country, and her mother, who cannot be here, and her wider family, friends, and loved ones." Jesse would be convicted almost a year later on November 22nd of 2019. The jury that day consisted of 7 women and 5 men, and at the very end of 5 hours, I believe is how long they deliberated this, they turned in a guilty verdict. Jesse Kempson is now serving a minimum of 17 years to life in prison. 17 years, I believe, is when he is eligible for parole. I don't know why they even gave an eligibility for him because he had done similar things, or I don't know, let's see how. He had attempted murder previously, and now he actually went through with it. So I have no idea why they gave him kind of a light sentence, but hopefully when his parole hearing does come up in a few years, it's denied. He is serving his sentence of 17 years to life in the Auckland prison, and thankfully in June of 2021, he actually tried to appeal, but his appeal was denied. So I don't think he'll be getting out anytime soon. Now, what has happened since Grace's passing? It's been around 6 years at this point, and her mother and her cousin actually opened up a charity called Love Grace. And the intention of this charity is to empower victims of domestic abuse. They, as in Grace's mother, Gillian, as well as her cousin Hannah, said that it was an incredible honor to be named in the King's New Year honors list. That happened in 2024. They were appointed OBEs. Now, if you're American like me and you had no idea what that stood for, I didn't either, so no worries there. Let's learn about it together. So, OBE stands for the Order of the British Empire. The Most Excellent Order of the British Empire is a British order of honor rewarding contributions to the arts and sciences, works of charitable and welfare organizations, and public service outside of the civil service. And it was established in 1917. And now Grace's family members are part of that. And Grace is a part of that too, because the charity wouldn't exist and all of the good works that have come from her charity wouldn't exist if the tragedy did not occur. So it's heartbreaking what happened to Grace. It was entirely avoidable, but it is also heartwarming that some good is coming from it and that her name is living on. The Love Grace charity also raises money for white ribbon charities in the UK as well as in New Zealand, which educate men and boys on attitudes that can contribute to violence against women and girls. Grace's mother and cousin said we would like to accept this award on their behalf and in Grace's name. Thank you guys so much for listening, and let me know what you guys thought of today's episode. See you next time.